In 2023, the amount of UFO sightings has increased dramatically, with governments even admitting that for years they have been seeing objects flying through the skies that they simply cannot explain. With this information, maybe it is time to stop ignoring some of the stories that people have told regarding their experiences with the strange craft. Hello, I'm Andrew Boyd, and though the skies in this dark dimension I have found myself trapped in contain nothing but the screaming faces of eldritch gods, perhaps you will have a new perspective when looking up at your own skies once I tell you about the top 5 UFO sightings in 2023 we can't ignore anymore. Part 4. Let us begin our journey. Number 5. Japan sighting. Our first sighting comes to us from Japan, where a man looked out his window one day in time to see an amazing sight, only for it to disappear before he could get his family to look at it. The following is his story as he related it. My name is Tatsumi Tanaka. I am 42 years old and the owner of a beauty parlor in Inaka City, Gunma Prefecture. Last Sunday, I saw a UFO, and it was the first time such a shocking matter happened to me. I never believed that I would have such an experience, but surprisingly, it happened to me. I was on the second floor of my house and casually looking out the east window when I caught sight of a white object, rather big, the shape impossible to describe, rising softly and perpendicularly from the surface of the ground. We see Mount Akagi in the northeast direction, and it was in this direction that the UFO rose, but I could not tell how far away it was. It was about 10 o'clock in the morning. I wondered what it was. I thought at first sight it must be an airship or a balloon. I strained my eyes to see better, but could not understand what it was. After rising straight up, it stayed for a while at a constant height and seemed to become blurred outside. It then turned into the oval shape that is familiar to us from TV or magazines. It was the same object, but not the same shape as before, but the outline was not clear. Soon after, it moved to the right at fast speed. It looked like a low-altitude flight, but it all happened so quickly, and then it just disappeared into the cloudless blue sky. I was so shocked, I fell out of my mind. This thing was so huge, but it disappeared just in a moment. I tried to explain what I saw to my wife and child who were right beside me, but I couldn't. I just pointed and could only shout out in surprise. My wife was very annoyed and said that everyone cannot see UFOs, only some people do and some don't. By then it had disappeared. I was so excited that I went outside with my daughter and searched the sky. But it was too late. I still can't believe I have had such an experience. I will never forget that movement and that speed. Something beyond common sense. It means to me that things exist that we don't understand. Number 4. New Zealand. Next, we have a story from New Zealand, where a woman was enjoying a nice day in her yard when she saw a craft unlike anything she'd seen before. This is her story in her own words. My name is Edith Perkins. At 8:30 p.m. Monday, I was doing some chores in our backyard. This is in Bexley, just north of Christchurch, South Island, New Zealand. I saw something in the sky, like a capsule or cigar-shaped object. At first, it had a silver whitish body with a darker gray forked tail. While I looked at it, it was just overhead, seeming to be coming closer. I was facing west. The rounded edges, front and back of the object, called my attention to it initially. Its size appeared to be 10 centimeters long, if held at arm's length. I suppose it was about 30,000 feet high, but it seemed very puzzling that there was no jet trail behind it. So, I went indoors to fetch a pair of 7x35 binoculars. My husband joined me and our home care nurse. As we three watched, a very bright light completely covered the object. It did not happen as a flash of light. It seemed to start up and then finish with a burst of light. I was seeing a different rear design on the craft with a forked end to it, and the color was now dark gray. Another burst of light occurred, and the object presented a rim all around the craft, with either intermittent colored lights on the rim, or else the rim was composed of rotating colored lights. These were in tones of reddish orange. This object then flew out over Pegasus Bay towards the northeast. Number 3. Papua New Guinea. Our story from Papua New Guinea involves a young man whose entire community was brought to a chilled hush when a strange craft came to town for a closer look at humanity. As he put it, my name is Alex James. I live in Pilla Pilla Community, New Guinea. About 7 p.m. last Tuesday, I went with 4 friends to Pilla Pilla Community School for rugby practice. We were going back to our village after dark when we saw some bright lights approaching. There were a lot of people about, some coming back from bathing, and others sitting around eating their dinners. When they saw the light, they all ran inside and locked their doors, except for a few of us who just stood and stared. As the UFO approached us, we heard no sound. The streetlights all dimmed just like a torch when the batteries are failing. It hovered over the coconut palms and looked huge. It was oblong in shape. It passed slowly overhead. My friends and I were almost frozen as we watched it. We felt as though we could not move or speak, because we were so shocked by the sight. The bottom of the UFO was oblong shaped, with very bright lights all around the edges. At the top was a pyramid-like shape, with lights around it also. Just bright white. No colors. It was huge and took over 30 minutes to pass by. We checked the time. When it was hovering over us, it seemed to be as bright as day. The whole place was lit up like bright daylight. That's how bright its lights were. Then the object just disappeared in the direction of the mountains near Vuvu. Number 2. Zimbabwe Sighting. Our next tale comes to us from a journalist named Cynthia Hind, who interviewed a teenager named Lloyd, who witnessed not only a strange craft, but alien life forms when he was awoken late one night. The following is quoted directly from her report. At between 1 and 1:30, he woke up, and because he knew it would be quiet at that hour, he decided to do some studying for his exams. Whilst thus engaged, he heard a clicking sound. It continued for some minutes, so Lloyd decided to check what it could be. He opened the front door and looked outside. He could hear the sound coming from up the road, and when he glanced in that direction, he witnessed something very strange. He quickly went outside and hid behind a hedge to get a better view. He was able to observe a small figure about a meter high, with a head like a rugby ball, dressed in white overalls. On its back, the creature had a small satchel, attached to which was an aerial with a flashing red light. Lloyd was terrified. He told me he was asphyxiated with fear and ran back into the house, jumped into bed, and covered himself with his blankets. He slept fitfully for the rest of the night. At 6 the next morning, he went to look where the creature had walked and found several footprints which he could not identify and which he attributed to the creature. When he arrived at school, he told his friends about seeing a ghost in the night, but one of his friends suggested that it was a UFO. Lloyd is now under the impression that the creature is called a UFO. Number 1. Australia Sighting. Our final tale of the day comes from a man by the name of Patrick Knowles. He was on a road trip with his family when they discovered a close encounter more terrifying than he could have possibly imagined. In his own words, it happened on January 20th. My mother, 2 brothers, and I were driving from Perth to Melbourne. We were going to drive straight through in shifts, and we planned to cross the desert at night when the heat wasn't so bad. By 2:30 a.m., we were in the Nullarbor Plain. We stopped for petrol and switched drivers. Sean was driving, and I was in the front seat next to him. The road was empty. Suddenly, we saw a bright yellow light up ahead, and Sean slowed down. As we got closer, the yellow light seemed to be emanating from an egg-shaped object hovering just above ground level. We thought we might be seeing things, but then a caravan passed, going the other way, and it swerved sharply to avoid the luminous egg. The closer we got to it, the more we realized it wasn't a normal vehicle, or a road signal, or anything like that. Sean swerved to avoid it, and we continued on, leaving it behind. Suddenly, the object started towards us. It appeared to accelerate with tremendous speed. We drove on, and it literally chased us. The faster we went to get away from it, the faster this object went after us. I reckon we reached a speed of 125 miles per hour, but it caught up in a matter of seconds. Then Sean made a sudden U-turn and headed back west in the direction of the petrol station. The UFO also turned around. I don't know how the hell it was flying, because it didn't have any wings or anything like wings. It just kept coming after us. Sean made another fast U-turn, heading back towards Melbourne again, but the UFO turned as well and kept pace with the car. In the back seat, everyone was scared. The dogs started barking and whining. Then, suddenly, we were hit. It shot a beam of light out and punctured our back tire. The back tire was on fire. We started sliding across the road. I realized if we braked, we would have to confront the UFO, but Sean didn't have any choice. Then it landed on the roof of the car and picked the car up. It lit up the car like a microwave. The heat was intense. Our hair was standing straight up, and we felt really funny, like we were being dehydrated. It was awful. Frightening. Like our brains were being sucked out. My fear was that I would be pulled out of my body. I put my hand out of the window and touched something spongy that burned my hand. I thought we were going to die. You could actually feel the car rising in the air. The car began to fill with a thick black fog. It was so hot, and all this soot, this junk started covering us. Our voices started changing. You know how a tape deck sounds when the batteries start to go flat. That's what it was like. Then I passed out. I came to when I heard a tremendous noise like a bang, and our car car suddenly dropped back to Earth. Dawn was coming up. The thing just flew away, and that was the last we saw of it. I had to change the tire, and we tried to clean out the black soot. There were marks on the roof of the car. As soon as we could, we drove fast to the nearest roadhouse. We were too shocked to talk for a while. Then we realized we had lost a couple hours' time during the incident. We called the police. The funny thing was, they were already looking for us. Someone, maybe the people in the caravan we passed, had phoned the police anonymously. Their report states that they witnessed our car being picked up off the road and shaken violently. They noticed the car was covered in black ash. The police inspected our car and noted the ash, the bad smell, and the dents on the roof. They were convinced something had occurred. They took us to the hospital, where we were treated for burns and shock. With that, another journey together is complete. The dark forces that run this evil dimension have asked that I remind you to like, comment, and subscribe, lest they be forced to trap you in this dark void space where you will have nothing but looped spooky music to keep you company as you regale viewers with tales of the macabre and the disturbing here on Top 5 Scary Videos.